comrades and friends. All right.
Good evening,
comrades and friends. You're all welcome to this online meeting organized by the Workers' Rights Campaign, which is a network of working class activists committed to the struggle for workers' rights and the self-emancipation of the working class, and the Elegant Nurses Forum, a radical and fire though the 70,000 naira is take home pay that cannot take any worker home. It was a cry from the trade union demand for a new minimum wage of 494,000 naira at the time. And some state governments are yet to pay that paltry sum. Workers face a much more severe cost of living crisis at the moment. Calls for a new minimum wage has echoed across the land. Unions, politicians, governments, parties, and civil society organizations have all noted that there's an urgent need for the national minimum wage review process to commence in earnest, and for this to lead to a significant increase. Much more than a increase, the working class deserves and desires a minimum wage that is a living wage. That is why the WRC and ENF are organizing this discussion today. We have an excellent panel of 3 speakers to kick off the discussion. Each of them will speak in the first instance for 15 minutes.
Hello.
Kindly mute when not speaking, please.
Okay,
Each of them will speak. Each of them will speak for 15 minutes in the first instance. We will welcome a first round of questions thereafter on the issues they have raised, and they will respond to this. We will then call them back for another round of interventions, specifically on what is to be done. This will be for 10 minutes each. And after that, the floor will once again be open for your questions and interventions. My name as a moderator is Baba Aye. I'm Secretary of the Workers' Rights Campaign. I will now start by introducing our panelists before calling each of them to speak. First is Ismail Bello. Ismail Bello is Deputy General Secretary of the Nigeria Labour Congress. He is a long-standing trade union activist. He worked for decades as education officer of the National Union of Textiles, Garment and Tailoring Workers of Nigeria, NUTGTWN, rising to become Deputy General Secretary of the Union before joining the NLC. Comrade Bello, as is fondly called in the movement, was a founding member of the NLC's National Coordinating Group on Education and Training, and has been a backbone of NLC's education and training program since the beginning of the century. Second is Abiodun Aladeton, in order of speaking, that is the Lagos State Chair of the Trade Union Congress, TUC. He is a seasoned trade unionist. He is also the Lagos State Council Secretary of the Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria, ASCSN, or ASCN as it's usually called, and Vice Chair of the Joint Public Service Negotiating Council, JPSNC, the trade union side in Lagos State. Aladeton is a chartered arbitrator and mediator, and the founder of Comrades Without Borders, an NGO that serves as a voice for the voiceless in society. As a union leader, he has represented the trade union movement on several committees in Lagos State, which include those that address child labor and that well, as much as possible, oversaw the distribution of palliatives during the COVID-19 pandemic. We remember how the governments played hanky-panky, but the workers' side spoke true to power on this. And Gifty Erupre is the national treasurer of the African Action Congress, AAC, the only registered radical left party in Nigeria. She is a feminist, Pan-Africanist, and eco-socialist activist. Erupre, who is also a member of the Socialist Workers' League, became active as a revolutionary when she was a student at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ife, where she was the campus branch coordinator of the Take It Back global movement. Before becoming national treasurer of the AAC, Gifty was the Oyo State treasurer of the party. You are all welcome, comrades. For the record, I don't have a clock, but when it is about 3 minutes left in the allotted time for you to speak, I will call to signals. Abeg, start rounding up, please. If I call for a second time, please note that this means stop. Now, let's start with my good friend and brother, Comrade Bello. The struggle for a national minimum wage to enable workers live a decent life has been a perennial, long-lasting one in Nigeria over the years. Could you help set the context by putting this struggle in an historical perspective? How successful do you think these struggles have been? And why have workers' expectations for minimum wages they could live on not been met? Comrade Bello, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Comrade Babaye, colleagues, and co-panelists. First, I want to thank Center for Workers' Rights for this very important initiative. It is good that your organization is bringing people together to discuss this topic. Not the kind of provocation that was done by the so-called progressive governors ignited the nation with the possibility of 100,000 naira minimum wage. That act in itself is an attempt, if I may look at it very critically, to sow discord within the movement. Because by the act of negotiation, it's always very difficult, to make the kind of gain that the workers desire through negotiation in recent times. So if at the end of the day, you engage in negotiation and you come up with 100,000, before your membership and before your membership, it's taken that what effort have you done as a union? What have you done to deserve the support of your members? When indeed political actors have already indicated the possible benchmark for the next round of wage negotiation. That shows the depth and the character of the current political leadership in terms of the attempt to muzzle all layers of organization and to cause division and further weaken our organization. So I think it's a strategy that we as labor unions must take cognizance of as we prepare for negotiation. Having said that, I also think it's important in this kind of discussion to remind ourselves of some of the basic terms and concepts that we use. First, we need to go back to the basics to recognize that in Marxist political economy, wages are understood as a fragment of surplus value. In other words, workers produce more value than they receive in wages. So for me, that's the context and the tone. So it's a continuous struggle to bridge the gap between what is kept by capital and what is paid to working people as wages. And that will lead me to maybe a small clarification also minimum wage. Minimum wage, what does it mean? It is an attempt, to offer some level of protection to people at the bottom in terms of how low can wages be. So minimum wage represents the the bottom that is possible in any economy is also given as a measure of protection for working people, so to say. While living wage, on the other hand, makes an attempt to ensure that wages reflect the realities of the economy and is able to ensure that workers earn income that can meet basic needs of food, shelter, housing, transportation, and other basic necessities of life. So the difference between a minimum wage and a living wage is that while the minimum wage does not make pretense about an attempt to cover what is basic for the working people, but just a protection against extreme poverty in terms of those who are earners. So living wage makes some basic effort to ensure that at least earnings reflect the basic needs of working people, so that people are able to meet their needs with the income that they earn. There are issues that have become
I'm not sure if it's only me, but can others hear Comrade Bello?
No, we
Not
can't
at all.
hear him. I think it's
Can't
network.
hear. Okay. Can't hear.
You see, that was what I was responding to someone earlier. You know, I had technical challenges. It's not.
if you check
Okay.
it,
We lost you for about 45 seconds, 1 minute. Can you, you're talking about as a measure to, you know, address the bottom rung. So yeah, about 1 minute. Bello, can you hear us? This speaks to the broader infrastructural challenges that we face in Nigeria. I mean, I was switching between networks earlier, and even at that, as you saw, I also could not avoid some technical challenges, some technical glitches. I'm hoping that we'll get Comrade Bello back soon. We'll keep the show on. I hope he has a better network connectivity. So we'll move to the second speaker. And when Bello, we're finding it very difficult to hear you. We're finding it very difficult to hear you. It's not audible.
Hello?
The connection. Hello, yeah, it's much more
Can you hear me?
now, but it's still a bit. Give
Can
it
you
a
hear
try.
me?
Yes, it's better now.
I am back.
Yeah.
Can
Excellent.
you hear me?
Perfect. Go on.
Is it better?
Yeah,
It's
better
better.
now. Better now.
It's better now.
And I'll take it for your minute. Yes, it's better.
Is it better now?
Yes, it's better now. We can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay,
We can hear
because
you
I don't know
clearly.
where we lost the link, but I was trying to make some definition of around wages, minimum wage, living wage, free wage, and the concept of the working poor. I think that's where we lost contact.
Exactly. That's where we lost you. That's where we lost. Yeah, good. So take it from there, please.
Exactly. So I was describing a situation where the working poor has even has even entered the lexicon of an organization like the ILO because it describes a situation where people are working and yet they cannot even afford $2 to $3 benchmark for extreme poverty in the world. So it tells you the gravity of the wage crisis that we have as a country. Then I move on to just briefly look at collective bargaining, minimum wage and living wage, and to just look at it that even as a union, we cannot win concession except we build the power of our organization and we build the power to engage and fight for improvement in our conditions. I also look at minimum wage over the years. What does it mean in Nigeria? What does it mean for the working people? Straight graphic.
We see you are there, Bello, but once again, we can't hear you. Your connectivity is still quite challenging. What I'll do now, flowing from what Comrade Bello is saying, hoping that he can then still be able to connect in the few minutes we have. I'll try to speak to some of what he has said, but if not, we move to Comrade Aladeton, and then we'll have Comrade Bello later. He did raise a few very important issues. One is even now talking about the working poor as a language that's...
It's back again.
Excellent. Good. I was hoping you would be back. Yeah, please, you have the floor. Go on.
I'm just insisting. So I was just now talking about looking at it within the context of state-led development and within the context of the neoliberal framework increasingly adopted by our government since the shift towards a structural adjustment program in 1986. And what does it mean for our attempt to set minimum wage? I have a small figure that I generated here. Let me just quickly look at the figure 1 and 1991. Fairly stable macroeconomic environment, fairly stable. Because remember that SAP happened in 1986. But that stability was also forced. Forced because when Buhari took over in 1983, he came up with a wage freeze policy. A wage freeze policy is an attempt to tame inflation, thinking that wages are responsible for inflation. So they put a lead on negotiation for the period that they were in power. And Babangida kept that until 1991. So effectively between 1981 and 1991, there was no change in the minimum wage. And by implication, there is no change in the status of wages across board. So, but after those years, in 1991, the Babangida regime adjusted minimum wage to $250. Remember that Sumonu and the leadership of Congress then had engaged the Shagari government for the first round of minimum wage until 2000. So from 1991 thereafter, another law between 1991 and 1998 until Abacha regime adjusted wages to around I think Abubakar Salam Abacha towards the end adjusted it to about 3,000 or thereabout. And that push led us to the Obasanjo regime, where for at least for the first time in a long while, there was some level of discussion and agreement around minimum wage, because what was done more during the Abacha Abdul-Salam period was more like wage fixing, even though called minimum wage. But by year 2000, a normal tripartite setting for minimum wage negotiation happened. And there was a wage level, 5,500, 7,500, that was agreed. But the point I want to stress here is also to look at, during the state-led kind of government, we had some kind of stability within the macroeconomic environment, with inflation being single digit, housing costs fairly responsible, and also government investment in social infrastructure and social facilities, education, healthcare. So whatever quantum of wage that you think you are looking at, we also need to look at those investments in other areas and how that impacts on the quality of life and quality of living of working people. But we began to lose that from 1986 onward. I think that point is very important. Now, from around 2000 up till 2011, some measure of stability, even within a neoliberal environment, and so you find wages are relatively stable. But let me also draw the comparison that between 1981 and 1991, a 10-year gap, then the next minimum wage, which was in 2000, played up to time. By 2004, there was some improvement. So somehow the time frame began to improve after the initially long haul. But later, between 2011 and 2018, which was a clear period of about 8 years, nothing happened. Then in 2019 to 2023, there was an improvement, which put the minimum wage at 30,000. So in 2011 it was 18. It was 18,000. In 2019 it became 30,000. Between 2011 and 2019 is a clear 8,000 gap. So what I'm saying in essence is that given the dynamic nature of the economy and the intensity of price rising of inflation, it was not funny period for the working people. Now in 2024, what will appear as if nominally, what appears substantial from 30,000 to 70,000. But if you look at the depth of the crisis that preceded that negotiation, in terms of rising prices as much as 25,000, as much as 20% inflation successively for about 3, 4, 5 years before we arrive at that 70,000. So if you look at it, you will see that
Comrade Bello, your network is acting up again. We had a good stretch for some minutes. I hope you can still come back. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, here, sir.
It's about the phase in which capitalism has entered with its neoliberal model. He also spoke about state-led development.
I'm back.
Good. All right.
Are we together again now?
Yes,
I was
yes,
talking about the benefit of state-led development, with the public investment in education, in healthcare, in infrastructure, ensure that workers enjoy the benefit of stable economy and benefit of value for the little income. But we lost that virtually completely under a neoliberal labor market. What has happened under a neoliberal labor market? Forget that labor market under state control, there was also strong regulation, which means that the state could join with the unions to ensure that minimum wage, health and safety conditions, and all of those that are respected, pension, and all of those are respected by employers. But in a liberal environment, the power of control of the state has weakened. So employers seems to exercise more power. Nothing demonstrates that more than the recent engagement of Dangote industry. We are both Penga Pengerson, having fought very well for the right of workers to belong to the union, could not enjoy state support. That fundamental right.
I know you've had quite a spate of bad connectivity, and which is why I allowed room to cover for that. Maybe you run. You could complete the thought, the argument in the second round. Hello? Comrade Bello, we can barely hear you again, but we'll come back to you. So sorry, I was enjoying your discourse, but we were still having challenges getting you now. So you'd have chance to come back to that, and there might be questions with regards to this, and we'll all speak more in the second phase of the meeting. We'll go now to the second speaker, and that is Comrade Aladeton, Comrade Abiodun Aladeton. Comrade Aladeton, you're a leader of the TUC, a trade union center strictly for senior staff unions. Unlike the NLC that has affiliates that organize across the junior-senior divide of the workforce, in the private sector, mainly junior staff, but in the public sector, some even start from level 7. That's with the NLC. But what this then means is that affiliates in the TUC, some would argue, should be less concerned about the minimum wage. And as Bill also was saying, that the minimum wage is essentially a social protection measure to safeguard the poorest of the poor amongst the exploited working class. But then there's the issue of consequential adjustments, because a minimum wage is supposed to, they say, a good wave lifts all boats, or something to that effect. So how have workers organized by TUC affiliates fared after the last minimum wage review in the face of rising cost of living? I'm also quite impressed by the fact that you're one of the leaders in the formal sector that has time and again expressed concern for informal workers and the need for their welfare and their rights to be taken into consideration by the movement as large. I would also want you, considering that most of those in the informal economy are not covered by the minimum wage laws, to speak to how you think their interests can be protected in a new wage review to ensure that their earnings is something that they can live off. So, Comrade Aladeton, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me. I must commend the organizers of this program. I think this issue is actually coming at a time when Nigerians and workers alike are actually asking questions as to when will their wages be reviewed upward in view of the harsh economic climate that they find themselves. So in order to, answer the questions you just asked, first of all, I would like to say that most of the affiliate unions in TUC, they are from the private sector. I think about 7 basic affiliates are actually operate within the public service. So it gives you an idea that TUC2 now, because I know from the record we have about 38 affiliates. We now have, some informal sector union now joining TUC also. So I think the call for a minimum wage is something that goes beyond one particular labor center. It's something that actually affects all workers generally. So I think against that backdrop, something that TUC as a labor center must also be interested in. So I would like to, just take it from where the first speaker stopped. Like he said, the minimum wage is just a minimum benchmark, a threshold that an employer must not actually go below. So it's something that has, it's something that make sure that workers are not left vulnerable and exposed to unnecessarily. Take a look at the political space. Even over the years, there has been this serious agitation to deregulate wages, that is to take it away from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent list, so that you now have governors trying to fix wages based on what they think is deemed fit. And there are several arguments against that too, because if we have a situation whereby the salary of the governors is being fixed by the Salary and Wages Commission, they earn equal salary irrespective of the IGR they develop across their states. So the question is, why are you saying that governors should determine what the wage should be in their state? So we know if that is allowed, it will definitely further expose workers, who obviously will be more vulnerable, because some of them may just fix the minimum wage as low as 5,000 naira. They don't really care. So you see, it is a constant conversation. But like we said, if you take a look at the history of the minimum wage, even to present day, the question is, are workers really doing better? Are the members, like you asked in your question, are members of TUC who are the senior staff, are they doing better? Are they better off? Yeah, I think the answer will still be no, because the way the minimum wage is structured, once you adjust the minimum base, if you are not careful, the entire salary structure will be distorted. And I think that's why you mentioned the issue of consequential adjustment. So you have to do that consequential adjustment so that the issue of seniority within the service, within the system, is still very much preserved, because that's the beauty of the service. And also, it is known that both the junior and the senior worker all go to the same market. So I think the senior is also interested in ensuring that the minimum base is adjusted, knowing fully well that it will definitely impact them also. And the truth is, every junior officer obviously knows that one day he or two will also get to that senior level. So I think it affects everybody. And like I said, if you take a look at this, are we really better now? Because based on the history established by Kwame Bello, if I hear him clearly, as that year 2000, minimum wage should be around 5,500. And I think if you put that to dollar term, that should be around, as at that time, I think that should be around $53.86 then. So, and this is 2026. So, and I'm very much aware that as at 2024, when it was increased by 133% from 30,000 to 70,000, the exchange rate as at then to the dollar, I think it was just 46 or so, $46 or so. And now I think it's around $50. So, by the time you do $50 in 2000, it was 53 point something dollars. So it shows you that even your 70,000 now is not as high as your 5,500 in year 2000. So one can, on the basis of such analogy, say that the purchasing power of an average Nigerian as at today is weaker and is lower. So, but the good thing is, when you agitate for increase in the minimum wage, what are the benefits that goes with it? It simply means worker will have a high standard of living because there will be more money in their pockets. People can afford one or two things, maybe health, education, and all that. And once worker have a very good spending power, it equally have a way of stimulating the economy. However, we must equally know that one of the basic arguments for those of us who have been privileged to be at the negotiation table, particularly at the state level, is that the government side will usually, give you some economic, statistics to actually tell you why probably maybe your request for a living wage cannot be accepted. And some of the issues they usually put forward are usually economic issues, telling you that if they pay you more, obviously it means maybe they will retrench, they will lay off due to the fact that, whatever they do, it has a way of affecting, the income and everything, budget and whatever. They give you all those kinds of, statistics so that you're beginning to choose between too much money for your members and protecting the job, of workers. So another issue is they will tell you that if they give you too much money, obviously it will lead to high inflation, which simply means by the time it is announced that you have a new minimum wage, the average seller in the market, average landlord out there in Lagos, in a city like Lagos and Abuja, wants to increase their rent, cost of goods and services will go to the rooftop, and once you have that, it simply means the little gain that you're going to make from the increment will definitely be eroded, by inflation. So, but by the time you put all this together, one begin to ask, is increment in wage the only way to address the challenge workers are facing in Nigeria? So some of us, I am of the view that we must begin to address some of the issues that actually erode us the value of our minimum wage. And one of those issues is the issue of housing. We talk of health. We talk of high cost of transportation and all that. Because we've noticed the moment you get this increase, within 1 month, the whole thing is gone. So I think this time around, what labor leaders should be doing differently is to bring other components into the negotiation. For example, I know what we did in Lagos at the last minimum wage negotiation. The truth is, what they pay presently in Lagos is actually higher than what is being reported in the media. Because before now, what we did, there is what we call the leave bonus component, and which is usually deducted from the salary of every worker and paid to them. They accumulate it and pay it monthly to different categories of worker. We have that before, but it was being deducted from the salary. But at the last negotiation, we said you will keep paying what you are paying, which means if somebody earns, let's say 85,000, the minimum wage in Lagos, 85,000. Before now, your 85,000, certain amount will be deducted and will be paid to you once in a year as leave bonus. But we said no, you are not going to do that. You keep paying the 85,000, but you go and source for the leave bonus externally. And the government agreed to that. So once in a year, you find workers still earning their leave bonus, but this time around, it's not being deducted from their salary. And also, there is something we call the health insurance component. We brought that in also in the course of the negotiation. And we said the Lagos State Health Insurance Law, employer pays 75%, while the worker pays 25%. So we said this time around, the counterpart funding from the government side, that government, because before now, government assists worker, to pay that amount, which is a flat rate for all workers. And if you go through their payslip, you still see the government counterpart funding on the payslip of every worker. So we said this money, since it's already reflecting on the payslip of the worker, it is assumed that that money belongs to worker. So what you are going to do going forward, leave the money there, go and source for your counterpart funding for the health insurance externally. At the same time, the government agreed So as of today, that money is left there while the government is still paying the counterpart funding for health insurance. So some of these things boils down to negotiation skills, leadership, and all that. So we are trying to look at things that are actually affecting of the naira of an average worker. Another commitment we made from the housing issue, for every government housing scheme that Lagos State is building, the union requested for 30% of it to be given to workers with a 40% rebate. The government said no, they won't be able to do 30%, but they can do 20. So which simply means if government should build 500 housing units, 20% of that 500 housing unit goes to worker. So if the house is being sold for 10 million, because you're a worker, government will sell the house for you for 6 million. That is what is operational today as far as Lagos State is concerned. And some of us, even myself that is talking, I'm a beneficiary of the housing scheme where I stay today. The money is being deducted from my salary on a monthly basis for the next 10 years. So these are some of the things we feel that union leaders should actually be looking at, because the moment you insist in always increasing the minimum wage, history has shown that less than a month or two of increasing the minimum wage, the prices of goods and services, we actually overtake the whole negotiation. And the reason is this: you only negotiate about minimum wage. Before now, it was 5 years. Now they've reduced it to 3 years. But before then, a lot of things would have happened and the value of the naira would have been eroded. So, and again, let's go back to the informal sector question. You see, why some of us are interested there is because that is where most of the working population actually domicile. Because the public sector is almost exhausted as far as some of us are concerned. But the private sector, there's a lot of anti-union practices there, but people are not looking at those places. We had a recent experience with a faith-based organization recently, One Global Plus, a company that is owned by Christ Embassy, a faith-based organization who should be held with the highest standard of employment. You will be so shocked that because the guys insist they have to be unionized, and the next thing they did, they were all sacked. 75 of them sacked by Global Plus Limited at Oregon. The only crime we can say they have committed is because they choose to be unionized. And this matter, we dragged it to Federal Ministry of Labor. Labor even told them this is wrong, go and reinstate them. They didn't answer. We did a lot of picketing. We blocked the place for almost 2 months. By the end of the day, the same people took us to court. 3 different lawsuits trying to stop the picketing, and which they did, because we are now back in court. What are they saying? Suing people for damages or economic loss here and there, all because these people choose to belong to, So you can see what is really happening in the private sector. They are the ones mostly affected, because you even find a lot of organizations, most of them, because the minimum wage benchmark is 25 employee and above. Some of them, once they just hit 24, they don't recruit anymore, just because they don't want to pay the minimum wage. So, and I'm equally aware that there's presently an informal sector employment bill before the National Assembly, which has actually passed its 3rd reading. So, as organized labor, I think those are the areas we must concentrate our energy on, so that laws will eventually be passed to protect the vulnerable people who are actually, who are the most vulnerable people in the informal sector. So by the time we contextualize all these things, we will see that, having more money is something that, is beautiful, is desired. But the fact is, if we keep asking for more money, if the handlers of the economy are not actually handling the economy very well, our members will still be vulnerable. Whatever they may get cannot still be enough to actually, take them home. So I think for now, maybe we'll pause it there. Maybe subsequently, if there are issues, we'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You were just right on spot, just a few seconds more. Much appreciated. It's a pleasure now to call on someone that has told me that She will hear my cough, but she might not agree. But I'll cough until I keep coughing and it doesn't stop. Anyway, without much ado, we come to the third speaker, the last but definitely not the least on the list, and that is Comrade Gifty, National Treasurer of the AAC. The African Action Congress has been on record as demanding a minimum wage that is a substantial amount. As way back as 2019, the party called for a 10,000 naira national minimum, 100,000, 5 zeros, pardon me, minimum wage. In 2023, it called for further increase and even added that there should be a cost of living wage sliding index. More recently, just 2 weeks back, the party further called for a minimum wage of not less than 500,000 naira. Some critics have said that this is possible, arguing that it is too much for government and private employers to pay. Why does the AAC think that such an amount can be paid to workers as minimum wage? And how do you think that can be made to happen? Comrade Gifty, you have the floor.
All
And
right,
I have
thank you. Thank you, Comrade Babaye, for the wonderful question. And I must really commend the WRC, the Workers' Rights Campaign, for organizing this. I mean, we are at a perilous time where we start hearing different kind of promises. I mean, those who have even forgotten about the workers or do not care about the workers will start pretending to like the workers. Good evening, comrades, workers of Nigeria, activists, and everyone who has joined us today. And I also thank our previous speakers, comrade, I don't want to mispronounce, Alade. Yeah, the two speakers. And I'm glad to have learned, thank you, Babaye. I'm glad to have learned that there is something different happening in the TUC organization in Lagos State, and it really would have been a beautiful thing if the same thing is implemented all over Nigeria. I mean, there's this saying that until every one of us is free, none of us is free until every one of us is free. If you are saying those kind of things are happening in Lagos, it's not happening in Nigeria State, it's not happening in Delta. Workers in Abuja are not saying the same thing, then we are all not free now. The AAC has proposed the 500,000 minimum wage at this time because obviously we see how things are running in our society, I mean in Nigeria. And minimum wage, the current one, 17,000 naira, is nothing to talk about. It's not a take home that we can really take home as workers. We do not necessarily have to beg to eat because we are working. And yeah, at the time, it was a Workers' Day 3 years ago, and I woke up hungry and I said, I do not want to be a worker. I'm not encouraged to be a worker. I mean, tell me why I would work, then there's somebody toiling on my own sweat, there's somebody enjoying my own reward, there's somebody who would just fold arms, sit under the AC, then feel like can travel all around the world. Why me, who is the worker, cannot do the same thing? These are some of the things that we've seen. And the Yoruba adage that says, Ishe logun Ishe, that is, work is the antidote of poverty. They've made us young workers to question all of these things if they are really true. I mean, a worker who cannot afford food, housing, transportation, healthcare, and education, despite working full time, is not merely underpaid. They are being denied the economic dignity that democracy ought to guarantee. So I would like to ask, I really didn't know the answer, what then is the purpose of work? Is it simply to keep a person alive from one payday to the next? Is it to work 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, or even more? every day and still go home unable to afford food, pay rent, access healthcare, or provide a decent education for your children, even as a worker. And recently, the Gen Zs are being mindful of having kids. I mean, some of us do not even want to have kids because we see what the workers are going through. We see what our parents are. They really struggle to provide food, pay rent. Then we are in a capitalist society. We are in a capitalist system where you have to pay for everything. Hopefully, we do not have to pay for the air that we breathe. Work is supposed to provide us with something more fundamental, a life of dignity. So because we talk about minimum wage, we are not talking about a figure written into a law. We are talking about the lives of millions of working people. We are talking about the value we place on human labor. We are talking about the people who create wealth in our society, who controls that wealth, and who ultimately benefits from it. We can say the 9 to 5ers, even the 9 to 5 is not really 9 to 5 in the real sense. You have to leave home as early as 5. For those in Lagos states, those in other states, you have to leave home as early as 7. And then if you're a woman, you have to wake very early because we can't deny it's a capitalist system, by extension, patriarchal. You have to wake as early as 4 or 5 to prepare your kids for school, get your own self ready, then you're out. You do not want to get late to work. So I want to say clearly that a worker should not have to choose between food and medicine. A mother should not have to choose between feeding her children and paying her rent. A woman should not have to explain in an abusive or exploitative situation because she has no economic independence. I mean, our media outlets for the past 2 to 3 weeks were not really, the reports we have there are not really encouraging. There are things that made us question, do we really deserve that I am a woman? As a woman who is a worker, should I blame myself that I want that economic dependence? A whole lot, different kind of violence, intimate partner violence, violence at the workplace, and so on and so forth. So for me and for us in the AAC, African Action Congress, the struggle for a living wage is not just an economic struggle. It is a class struggle. As the facilitator has introduced Comrade Babaye, he has said and obviously we can all see that's the only socialist party we have in Nigeria, the only revolutionary party we have in Nigeria. And when I say it's a class struggle, I also mean it is a struggle for social justice. I am laying emphasis now. It is also a struggle for gender justice. It is also a struggle for gender justice. This will take me back to the topic, towards a new minimum wage, the struggle for a living wage. So talking about that perspective, I will be talking more about that. The women are disproportionately affected by low wages. Yes, we are. I wanted to say yes or yes, but then yes, we are. And when we see women working in formal organizations, which we have few women working in the formal organizations, we have more women. Women are often overrepresented in low-paying sectors and informal employment. So when the minimum wage is too low, women are more likely to be trapped in poverty. So when we talk about the minimum wage, most times, I think we should ask, or we must ask, minimum wage for whom? Because the Nigerian worker is not a gender neutral figure. The economic crisis does not affect a man and a woman in exactly the same way. I have cited some examples of how the patriarchal society, the patriarchal Nigeria has programmed women. There is a schedule that expected to do on a daily basis as a woman. Whether you are single, whether you are married, if you are single, or there are some things you should do at the place of work, or even dictate the kind of jobs that you should do, or provide some certain conditions, that appear inhumanly. Women carry the burden of unpaid care work. Women are also expected to take responsibilities for cooking, cleaning, care. In fact, caring for.
Can't hear you clearly, and I'm giving my best cough also.
You are not coughing yet, are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, it's better now. We're losing you, but I gave a first cough, so you have about 2 minutes here.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear the first cough. Thank you, facilitator. So when food prices rise, women spend more. It is the woman that the society has programmed to spend more time trying to stretch the family income. When there's an healthcare crisis in the home, the woman would most likely sacrifice her own and all of that. And then the informal economy, I'm trying to rush myself now. There's the informal economy part of the conversation. When we talk about minimum wage, do we consider the informal workers who are not really tied to receiving a specific amount at the end of the month? We have the hairdressers, we have the tailors, we have the yalagbos. These are the people, the women who sell the herbal products. Do we consider them into it? So if our definition of the Nigerian worker excludes the women by the roadside, the domestic workers, women working from dawn to dusk in the informal economy, our definition of workers' rights is incomplete. And I'm glad to have heard from Comrade Alade, who has said yes, it's true. I agree with that. I followed up at some point about the recognizing the informal workers. And this was even as a result of fights. The informal workers fought. At the time, they were waking up to tweets. I joined in my own way. And we're doing all of that, for us to get to this point. And it's surprising that these are the things we still have to fight for at this time of our existence as humans. Back to the topic, workers create wealth, but the wealth they create is concentrated in the hands of a few. We can see. The question before us is not whether Nigeria has enough wealth. The question should be who owns that wealth, who controls it, and who benefits from it. We have the Dangotes of Nigeria, we have the $10 of the world, we have the Tony Elumelu. As far as food, people are.
I think technology has helped to seal my second laugh, cough, not laugh.
I'm happy.
All right.
I'm almost done, though. I'm almost done.
Okay.
So the question before us should simply be, what should be the minimum we can pay a worker? And AC has proposed 500,000 naira. Our presidential candidate, rather, has proposed 500,000 naira as the minimum wage. And the NLC is also trying to make effort to make it 650,000 naira. That's not even the problem. For the 70,000 naira minimum wage, how many states are implementing it already? At least workers in Lagos State tend to say it's a different situation for them. What about workers in different states? What about workers in Ogun State, very close to Lagos? What about workers in Anambra? What about workers in Kaduna? Our northern comrades, these are things that we should look into. These are things that we should talk about. Like I said earlier, until every one of us is free, none of us is free. Because my time is up, I'll leave by saying, workers of Nigeria, unite and fight. Thank you. I didn't hear the cough, though.
Thank you very thank you very much for that. And yeah, that was a very well put forward one. We'll open the floor for questions and interventions based on what the speakers have said thus far. But just before that, I'll briefly speak to a few things raised by the different speakers. One of the most important things in what Comrade Bello said is that we need to fight to win a living wage. He also spoke as well to institutional changes that have taken place and also about negotiations. I mean, often it is expected that it is exactly what is demanded as minimum wage that will be gotten by rank and file workers and people generally, and it is legitimate. But just as Escotoyo used to say, the trade union movement is sort of a beggarly movement, and negotiations is written into its DNA. So often you get less, but even when you get less, it's also about what is this worth, and to what extent does institutional power vis-a-vis organizing power, which is workers' power, matter more. I always think of something that 1981, which was when you had the minimum, when the Sumonu-led NLC asked for a minimum wage, they asked for 250, they got 50% of it, 125 naira. As at that time, I remember quite clearly, my father bought a brand new Toyota Cressida. It was around 5,000, between 5 and 7,000 naira. Now, at that time, you needed, I mean, it was a senior staff, but at that time, you needed the equivalent of 3 years and 3 months minimum wage to buy a brand new Tia chassis. Now, you need equivalent of about 12 years minimum wage to buy a second-hand Corolla. Second-hand of that. So it gives you an idea of just how much real wages have sharply declined. And Comrade Aladeto did speak to part of what institutional power can get, and also the, so to speak, benevolence of state government. But it is not enough. Workers in Nazi Germany got wage increments, life got better. But at times it is also about incorporating the organizations of working class into the system of the state and the circle of the ruling class to sort of, take the wind out of the sails of our struggle. So the place of struggle for winning minimum wage, and as Gifty did say, that the minimum wage should be seen as part of a broader class struggle, because capitalism by its dynamic, its mechanisms, please, if you're not speaking, mute yourself or otherwise, and particularly Comrade or Sauri Suleiman, I had actually sent a personal message to you that if it continues, I'll have no choice but to remove you. But please, I don't want to do that. Kindly mute yourself. So, as I was saying, it is written into the DNA of capitalism to exploit. It is from our labor. The secret of their wealth lies in our poverty. It lies in the extraction of what our labor generates. So they will never fully give us what is due, because that is the surplus value they draw from. But we have to fight to win more of that and see that as part of the broader struggle to liberate ourselves, smash the exploitative structure that capitalism is and build a better world. So that having been said, comrades, if you have any questions, any comments specifically related to what our speakers have said so far, kindly raise your hand electronically and you can have the floor before we come to the second and final round of their interventions, which will be to speak on what is to be done. Yes, I see your hand up last, Shoneye. You have the floor.
Hello, comrades. Yeah, thank you, Comrade Ismail, for that presentation, as well as Comrade Gifte and Comrade Alade. That's awesome. And I was thinking, linking all the contributions of the three keynote speakers, I was thinking that in terms of what the AAC is projecting, particularly when we look at how the capitalists in the country are declaring billions in profit every year, and they keep making the argument that minimum wage cannot be increased. When we then look at what they do with the profit they make, for instance, you see Tony Elumelu organizing White Party, which staff of UBA cannot attend, invite musicians like Whiskey, Tiwa Savage, and we know on the average how much it costs to invite this kind of musicians to events. So they waste these resources to enjoy life, but they claim that they cannot afford to increase wages. So the question from this is that, is it that the salary, what the AAC is proposing, is it that it is not feasible, or that it does not exist within the priority list of the private employers and the government, which has been very wasteful in the recent time, more than ever before? And then linking it that the Nigerian workforce is shifting. Recently, about 92% of workers are now in the informal sector. We are also seeing a shift from the conventional workplace to what is more technological driven in terms of remote work, hybrid work. How are the labor unions? I've heard so much about what is going on in the Lagos state, but majority of workers in that state are invariably in informal sector, and they pay, I tend to argue that they even pay more tax than the civil servants, because their taxes are not recorded. One Iyaloja will just come and say today they will pay this amount, tomorrow they pay another amount, and we have these informal workers in different categories. What are the organized labor unions doing in terms of aggregating the social protection of informal workers? And we have seen in the recent time, to wrap it up, that when organized labor call actions, we see only few people on the street. When they call protest, it's always like everything is going normal. And I think the organized labor should now be conscious that it is not just about the Alakoways. The the Alakoways who go to work, that they should be catering for, because much of what I have heard is about the people who are in the civil service. But how about the 92% of the rest of the working class, who even constitute the vulnerable of our class? What is the organized labor doing about them? How does the AAC, for instance, intend to incorporate these informal workers into the line of programs? I believe for the purpose of many of us who are on this meeting would be able to learn what our trade unions are doing, what can be done to incorporate this thing. Thank you very much, comrade.
Thank you very much. Well, that is partly what they'll speak to more on the second Dan, but yeah, we can still. Thank you very much for those and for the insightful perspective on the fact that the rich is actually getting richer, and saying that the poor cannot afford to get little sugar for their cake, while the rich are taking the little sugar for their tea, while the rich are taking the cake, to borrow from Ras Kimono. Moses, you have the floor.
All right, thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right, thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here. My name is Moses Andrew, and I have a reaction, not a question, regarding to what the TUC leaders was saying, I I disagree with some part, and I also agree with what the AAC uh, national treasurer was saying. Now, which I'm in disagreement with what the trade union leader was saying. Is that there is no how the government will ever agree with you that there is money enough to take care of the populace or the workers. Because the major problem we are having in this country is the problem of corruption, greed, and selfish interest. Corruption in the sense that people want to misappropriate funds for their personal interest by awarding contracts to people, to companies they will benefit from. By greed, in the sense that they think about only where they can get from, how they can gather from everybody and add it to their own. Then by selfishness, is that they don't care about the people. They are thought and imagination. It's all about how they can gain only them. And these are few people. And that's why majorities are poor. Because the majority are being neglected. And then they will tell you that if they implement budget of 100,000 as far back as 2019, that it's going to be possible, there's going to be inflation. Recent time, one of the ministry, the African Congress presidential candidate declared 500,000 naira minimum wage. Through the government of Kwara State, it stated that they have held a meeting and that they have resolved that Nigerians deserve 100,000 minimum wage. And we know that it's a lie. Even the 70,000 minimum wage is yet to be fully implemented by this state government. By even from the federal at the federal level, workers are still not being taken proper care of. The social amenities, nothing is working. Like that, healthcare, which they are deducting from their salary monthly, NHIS, is not working. Many jobs, the average worker cannot purchase it. Why? Because they will tell you that it's not inclusive in the NHIS, that you should go and purchase such jobs outside. There are people of kind treatment that will not offer you as an NHIS patient. Why are they doing all of this? It's because they don't care about the people. The hospitals themselves, we are workers there. Trust that. Working on that, it's not be taken care of. And that's why you see doctors going on strike. In fact, they are tired. The best option for them now is to just out of Nigeria. Now, what am I trying to say? There is no any guys will ever agree that there is money. The inflation that we are talking about, as a governor or as a president, why can't you make law even before increasing the minimum wage? Make laws that will regulate the purchasing, I mean the state of the purchasing and state public services that will protect both buyers and sellers in the market. Now, where is it that they are talking about this? They don't empower businesses. They don't empower a person. They don't make provision for that. They prefer stealing our money and investing in funds in US, UK, in Dubai for their selfish gain, buying estates in outside countries. Then what happened to the working class? So my disagreement here is that it is corruption that is driving the economy. It is greed that is driving the economy. It is selfishness that is driving the economy. Then to answer what the gift said, now, if we not say that uh, the the 500,000 minimum wage of AAC should be implemented, people will always say, no, it is not inflation, why are we going to get the money? But when they are stealing trillions of naira out of this country, where are they getting the money they are stealing? Of course, am I still audible?
Yeah, you're audible. I'm using style to say try around. We dey enjoy you, but we have a few more questions and then the response and the last phase of the meeting.
Okay, let me just summarize in 2 minutes time. Now,
Thank you very much.
yes, sir. When we talk about inflation, now, why would there be inflation when a man like me as an individual could deeper into the treasury or whichever means it got the money for purchasing property worth 230 billion? That is for property alone. Recently, 8.8 trillion was said to be unaccounted for. This was a revelation from the World Bank, from the IMF, which are the economic referee. Where will this money come from? Has that cost inflation? Of course, no. But they always make all these arguments to make the working class look awful, even when there is no road. Make the working class work very hard and not see the light of the day. Therefore, it is very necessary that the trade union leadership and the labor in general allow their members to agitate, because as long as you are a leader, the politician will come after you when you are forced to agitate. And that's why at this very point in time, the labor union must rally around a candidate that is going to prefer their interest, because these capitalists are not ready to give us strength. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Of issues. Due to time, would limit the following calls. The speakers now would be the Comrade Ajibola Aisha, Comrade Emmanuel Edonwoyi. I saw Comrade Florence Chaba, okay. Then Comrade Olamide Africano, and Comrade Florence Chaba. And then there are 2 questions in the chat by Comrade Victoria. So, Comrade Ajibola, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Baba Aye, and the 3 speakers. They really did justice to the topic. I want to support the speaker that says living wage should be very, very important, and we should look towards the minimum wage. The living wage. Because minimum wage over the years has actually not solved the problem of workers. In Nigeria, the time they hear the minimum wage has been increased to so before the payment, the market women, the traders have already inflated the price of the goods. So, and at the same time, the government will not look back to say the price is fixed, so let us do something about it. So minimum wage hasn't helped us. Even if they asked the government to pay us 1 million per month, I want to tell you it will still not be enough. The only thing that can, because the last speaker talked about, what about the people at the informal sector, the roadside workers, the hairdressers and all the rest. The only way these people can benefit from this money that we always agitate for by the labor leaders every 3 years is by agitating for a living wage. Living wage have a way of reducing the burden on food, the burden on health sector, the education. You know, there is a Yoruba adage, I will translate it, that if feeding is out of one's what is it called, one's responsibility, that responsibility is almost half solved. So let the labor leaders please agitate for living wage. This will force the government to restructure the social activities of even their own government spending. They will also restructure all those things. They will know that once they are paying every worker based on what they can eat, honestly, things will change for the common man in the street and also the workers. Thank you so much. Hello, Baba Aye.
I hear you loud and clear.
That is my little contribution.
Okay, thank you very much, and for keeping that short and straight to the point. I now call on Comrade Olamide Africano. Comrade Olamide is National Coordinator of the ENF. Are you there? We can't hear you.
Yes, I'm here, Comrade.
Hear you. All right, please you have the floor.
Okay. Good day, everyone. My name is Thomas Abiodun Olamide. So, my own question goes in 2 ways. I remember when the TUC chairman was talking about housing units in Lagos, how they were able to bargain for some units of housing schemes from the government for the workers, of which is a beneficiary. That's a good idea, but hope it is not only the labor leaders that are beneficiaries. What about the workers? And what about other workers? For instance, in our own profession, not everybody will be employed by the Health Service Commission as nurses. There are people working in the private sector. They've tried so much, to be employed by the government. What is their fate? 2, what are the labor leaders doing to ensure that at least life is a bit bearable for workers that are not in the government sector and the informal workers too? At least I know that F1 is the Union of Informal Sector Workers. I don't know if they are under the official trade unions. That's number 1 question. Then number 2, why is it that the trade unions at the state, at the national level cannot clamor for such too and encourage other states? In fact, Ogun State, I used to wonder if they have labor leaders at all, because I've never seen a situation whereby the labor unions have been very is even an understatement. I've never seen a situation whereby they are responsive before. I could remember during the case of Nosa Jibola, and she contacted NLC chairman. Thank God other people came in and the ENF came through for her. What if there was no ENF on ground? What would have happened? So I think the union leaders at the national level should be able to encourage those at the state level to fight for rights of the workers and not just be there as figureheads. Thank you very much. Over.
Yeah, thank you very much, Olamide. I would now call on Florence Chaba. It's a great pleasure to see you, comrade. How are you? You have the floor.
Good day, comrades. It's a pleasure to be in your midst. It's been a while, Comrade Babai, but I'm glad to be here. I'll go straight to the point. So I listened to the first speaker. I was glad I was able to get a little bit of history on the minimum wage in Nigeria. And then also the second speaker, but the second speaker got me asking some questions, right? He explained that it's not just about getting the minimum wage increase, but also we should look at the broader perspective like housing, transportation, because the minimum wage increases or causes inflation. So in my curiosity, I went online to kind of like ask, because the reason why I was curious was because in 2023, we all saw that what brought about the much inflation that people that had effect on people was when the president was sworn in, and then he said, subsidy gone. Every prices skyrocketed. So I do know that increase in minimum wage can cause inflation, but that's not the primary reason for inflation that would actually affect Nigerians to the point that their purchasing power is reduced and they practically become beggars. Okay, so that is one perspective. The next perspective is, which is my question here, is why are workers not coming together in Nigeria to get rid, will I say use the word get rid, or to drive out the people who make policies that make life hard for them? The reason why I'm saying this is that in the UK, for example, when Keir Starmer was coming in through the Labour Party, everybody bought into the policies, the ideas, and they all massively voted for the Labour Party. And when Keir Starmer was deviating from what he's supposed to do to make life easy, although in some aspects he was doing great, but what was actually affecting people more, he wasn't doing that, like increasing transportation and the rest. They had to look for somebody else, and we just literally had a new prime minister. So why can't workers, all this effort was brought in by organizations actually. It's not like it just went out simply. Organizations like trade unions in the UK, everyone was putting the pressure on the government to do the right thing. Then they had to change the prime minister. So my question is, why are Nigerian workers not coming together to get rid of leaders that implement policies that are not beneficial to them? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question and the broader intervention, Comrade Florence. I will now call on Comrade Emmanuel Edonwo. Sorry for skipping you earlier. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Comrade Babaye. Thank you to all the speakers who spoke today. I'm going to be very brief. Mine is like a question and a suggestion in two. I want to thank the AAC rep for speaking very candidly about workers' dignity, and I think it's a very, very important message, and it's something that is not often spoken as much in conversations such as this. I want to talk about the 500,000 naira minimum wage specifically. I know when you mention something like this, especially on social media, you see technocrats who come out and say that if you do that and you scale that up across, the National Civil Service, for example, or it's going to inflate the government budget, and even right now, the government, is borrowing to meet its obligations and whatnot. I think one thing that is often overlooked or not, spoken as much, when we talk about increasing the minimum wage to this level is the fact that our government, our leaders are mismanaging, misappropriating, diverting, stealing the money right before our faces. One very good example is, even the 2026 federal government budget that was just approved across different organizations, parastatals. You are seeing budget being approved for activities that cannot reasonably be said to be under their portfolio. So I think one thing, it should be sort of a dual message, right? Oh, we want workers to earn the fruits of their labor. And we are going to be doing that by imposing wealth taxes on our ruling classes, by reducing the cost of governance, right? So that, the message we are passing will have, a sort of, a great logical conclusion, at least to the mind of, some of these technocrats who will come out and, say some of these things. That the reason there seems to be no money to pay workers fairly is because the money that is there, our ruling class, our political class are stealing and monopolizing it. I think that is whatever breath we say that we want to increase the minimum wage, we should say that, this is going to be a consequence of it, and this is how we are going to go about it. That is my my own submission. Thank you. Kwame Baba, I'm done. I don't know if network allowed me to speak. Hello.
I've had a running battle between MTN and Airtel over the last, so you could see there's zoom me off and zoom me back again. So the essence is to have a robust discussion on which is taking place. The questions have been noted. The speakers will speak to this. So I'll just also appeal that you have patience for us to spill over the time set a bit. Yes, we started a bit late also due to, waiting for, and we've had quite a very good participation rate now. So we'll take this last, and now the speakers list will definitely be closed after this. So we'll have Professor Iziele Nagbon, Joachim Okpara, and Olushola Joel. Prof. Agbon, it's a pleasure to have you here. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thanks to the speakers. I see the speakers have emphasized the fact that no matter the minimum wage, sudden increase implies an inflationary trend, reduces the real wage of the workers anyway. One of the ways in which other countries have fought this problem of reduction of real wage when minimum wage goes up is they've introduced an automatic cost of living adjustment. In countries like Brazil and Costa Rica and Malaysia and France, there's actually the struggle in the past, they struggled over a minimum wage formula. The formula is automatic. So every year, that formula captures the inflationary trends, it captures the increase in cost of living, it captures the impact of devaluation of the national currency, and it captures all the other exogenous impact on the purchasing power of workers due to the international capitalist system, so that the workers are at par with respect to their share of the surplus value generated in the system. So the real wage does not fall. So that's one of the things we might have to consider rather than fighting for this time, rather than fighting for a figure that get neutralized with currency devaluation and inflation. Then finally, also, in the past, we have been successful with respect to getting a high minimum wage when we are able not only to get the public sector workers, because in Nigeria, the public sector workers get this minimum wage and private sector workers are normally higher. And therefore, they also get an increase in wage. And then the wages of the people in the informal sector now increases. So this time we think that in Nigeria, we should not leave the negotiation or the fight to the hands of the leaders of the NSC and TUC. We should try to mobilize other civil society and interested party to join the fight, so that it is so that we have the public view in our side, and therefore we're able to influence the struggle and argue for automatic formula on automatic adjustment rather than a figure. Thank you to the speaker, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Prof. Agbo. Joachim, and then the final speaker, Comrade Joel Olushola. Joachim, you have the floor.
Comrade, good evening, and I just want to join others to salute the speakers and the organizers. The issue is Comrade Bello raised it, and he did that very, very well. There is minimum wage, as the name implies, it's all about class struggle. There's no way capital will pay you a wage that will be sufficient enough for you to begin to think investments or acquire property. Once we begin to look at it from that dimension, negotiation itself is also a class struggle. So once we begin to see it from that angle, then we now begin to show more interest. The organized labor need to begin to show more interest on political education. And that's the area I really want to commend the organizers, because we really don't need to lament. We need to organize ourselves and begin to think and look at areas we can really get workers' power. And the trade unions are the school of the workers. They must adopt very strict political education and debate, so that workers can not just only fight for minimum wage or better working conditions, but fight to have ownership and control of the means of production. So we must go beyond our historical mission by really embracing political education to raise that consciousness that minimum wage and all that it is, they are all about class struggle. Because an employer, a capitalist, will pay you a wage that you will continue to rely on it for survival. So if it is 500,000, 600,000, whatever it is, that is what it is. But how can we organize ourselves as workers and social movements? Organize ourselves in a way that will take control. And that's the future that we must begin to look onto. And I will encourage that we begin to do more of these engagements and involve our other colleagues in the movement, so that we all begin to think beyond what we already, where our minds are fixed. for now. We have to begin to look at the bigger picture of our struggle. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Comrade Joachim. Comrade Joel Olushola, you have the floor.
Thank you, Comrade Papa. I am delighted to speak to this a very sensitive and a timely issue like minimum wage. It has been a maximum burden for over 3 decades now. It's not changing, and it's I can reasonably say that it's becoming the stress globally, even for the advanced countries who are enacting it as a law to be paying, to be making the minimum wage yearly thing. It doesn't make any meaningful thing. It doesn't make any meaningful impact in the life of the workers. So in Nigeria, we can quickly review
Comrade Shola, it seems we lost you. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, there was boom, the campaign, but yet they still give this minimum wage, which later will result in
Shola's connectivity seems to be on and off. Comrade Shola, can you hear me? Can anybody else hear Shola?
Yeah. Hello.
Your network
Can you
is
hear me?
bad.
It's breaking.
You are breaking.
Sorry. Anyway, let me quickly say what I want to say. The truth of the matter is that the labor movement is supposed to mobilize all the resources that they have, in order to ensure that people are restored back to the at least decent, this minimum decent life. A situation whereby people who are collecting about 300,000, they are complaining, of taking. How can you eradicate corruption in such a system? We should even be encouraging the masses, the poor working classes who have access to get corrupt now. We should praise them, because how do you justify the addition to get to work? Even if they ask you to be coming to office in three times in a week, it's not even possible. By the time you pay the rent, by the time you pay for the school fees, by the time you eat, the money is gone before the middle of the month. That's the reality. So the labor movement, NSC and TUC, and the civil society and the party like AAC, they should collaborate with PRP or any other ready party, like-minded party, to mobilize resources for labor, to mount pressure on labor, to mobilize their constituency and say, government, look, forget about what has happened, forget about our political issue here. We are dying. The people are dying. The people cannot continue like this. You cannot be getting corrupt. Look at the corruption that is happening. It's happening in the parastatals and the agencies. It's happening in the presidency. It's happening in the political, Are the private sector immune from the corruption? Big corruptions are happening there because, in fact, they won't talk because the system has always favored the few companies that is supposed to have naturally, are nationalized. We don't have a legal system that is working. Some of those companies are corrupt to the extent, private companies, not even the public. Nobody is challenging them and everybody. It's just few. And then you are expecting the downtrodden not to get corrupt. The system is making many people to get into corruption because how do you justify 300,000? Those people that are, maybe it's the median salary now,
We have lost you again, but it seems we got the gist of your points because it's breaking. You're going in and out. So
that's my message.
That's
All
my
right.
message.
Thank you very much. We got the gist of it. Thanks. And the network connectivity issue it shows how generalized it also is. We have quite a plethora of questions, and most of them feed into what should be the second round of engagement by the speakers. So I'll just like bullet out the questions and we'll roll them with the next round of questions for the speakers to address. The key questions, a number of them are overlapping, and I'll start from what is in the chat and which is from Victoria. Victoria expressed a view that, the national associations have not been up and doing. How can unions really take the fight forward? This is part of the second question, as I said, that all the speakers will speak to. But she then also raised that how can the unions convince governments and you could say employers as well, that's private sector employers, that adequate wages should be paid if workers appear to be lackadaisical in their work. Although if you ask me, if there are anyone that are more lackadaisical, it's a part of the ruling class. You might say some are entrepreneurs, but lots, either from money they have stolen from us or money they have inherited, just put their money there, and that's without they themselves actually been putting in any effort genuinely. So workers are there ever as lackadaisical as the ruling class, especially the rentier ruling class that are very pivotal in Nigeria's political economy. A common question which came out from Lars, from Ajibola, and a couple of others had to speak to the informal economy, especially when you take into perspective the large percentage of the informal economy for working people. The working people constitute the vast majority, over 2/3, some we will say 3/4 plus of the population of the workforce are in the formal economy. How do we factor them into this? Then there has also been the issue of beyond the minimum wage. How do we address what in other quarters are called the social wage? Issues like housing, issues like transportation, and I think this partly speaks to Aladeton's earlier intervention. And related to that, Comrade Olamide did ask, how do we ensure that rank and file workers benefit from this, and not just the trade union leaders. Then there was the issue of corruption. Comrade Moses spoke extensively on this, that it's a major part of the problem. And also Comrade Joel, they pointed out that we could argue that corruption and all that, much more than wage increments, should be held responsible for inflation. Comrade Joachim highlighted the facts of the multidimensional nature of the class struggle, speaking of negotiations, and that speaks to a point I earlier made of the different forms of power. That is part of the institutional power that workers have. And even this institutional power was won by organizing power, which is the primary form of workers' power. And that takes us also to the proposal which Professor Izielen raised about, rather than the minimum wage, we should be talking of cost of living adjustment. It did give examples of some countries where it is automatic. Although in most of these countries, I can say definitively for France that it is not automatic. What is done is you factor in all this, especially the rate of inflation, change in rate of inflation, but the unions at branch level still have to then negotiate with the employers. There are a few countries where it is automatic. In Europe, this is in the Nordics and with Belgium. For several reasons, but the most important reason is that there have been waves of strikes and protests in decades gone by, with which the working class had won this. So you see again back to the relationship between institutional power and workers' power. So as I said, these are quite a well-sized load of questions, and most of them feed into the two questions which I would want the speakers to respond to. So you can equally respond. Yes, there's Florence Chaba's question with regards to how do we get together to kick out those that don't adequately represent us. Although when we also link it with Joachim's position of negotiations vis-a-vis working class emancipation and the class struggle. I mean, we could also still argue of that neither A.K. Stammer nor Anandi Boram actually represents the working class per se. But however, and this speaks to the issue of how do we organize to win much more than the minimum wage and social wage, which are not mutually exclusive, as well as cost of living adjustments, and to link this with a broader struggle to overthrow the capitalist system, which is exploitative, which is designed to continually ensure that workers never get the full value of the labor power they expend, because that is how the capitalists make their profits. So, taking note of this and urging each of the speakers to put this in perspective as they address this, as they speak in this last round, I would call on them to speak to these two questions. What, in your view, is a living wage? And how can we as working people, our unions, our parties, and the broader civil society fight to win a new minimum wage that is a living wage? And just before going on, to put in the fray, and I think Emmanuel Edenwoyi spoke to it, that the AAC's call for 500,000 also speaks to an earlier call for a cost of living minimum wage sliding scale, which is like the cost of living adjustment. So essentially, within this potpourri of questions, what in your view constitutes a living wage, and how can we fight for it, taking consideration of the broad spectrum of unions, parties, informal workers' organizations, and the broader civil society to fight for a minimum wage that is a living wage. And I'm doing this also because to save time. So you use that opportunity to also please give your final words to anything not covered by this question or the earlier questions raised from the floor. So this time around, we'll start from Comrade Gifty. You have the floor, Comrade Gifty.
Thank you, Comrade Babaye. So I think talking about the minimum wage, the living wage, how can we attain that? First, we need to emancipate our own minds. We have to do that ourselves, When the presidential candidates, Comrade Omoyele Sowore, had said we need to make the minimum wage 500,000 naira, the same working people are the one asking, how is that possible? Or how do we want to get that? there's inflation, it will lead to inflation here and there. Meanwhile, we have the senators, we have the people doing nothing. We just go there to shout, yay, nay. Some would even sleep on camera doing nothing. And these people are getting millions just because they've gone to shout, yay, they've gone to shout, nay. And so it is when the people understand that they deserve to be treated like humans. It is when they understand their right. It is when they know, oh, as a worker, you deserve a maternity leave. As a worker, you can always get burnt out. You should be able to ask for a break. You should work in a flexible place. Work should not deny you of your humanity. So it is until when we understand that, then, every one of us agrees and say, okay, we can now agree and say this 500K can be our minimum wage. Meanwhile, I also wanted to add earlier that if the minimum wage comes to realization that it is 500K or it is 650K, 650,000 naira, if our naira keeps devaluing, it will still amount to nothing. This is another aspect of the education again. If our naira was what it used to be when 1 naira was equivalent to $1, you could get anything you want with a naira. Unlike now that the 70K can get you a bag of rice, can get you different varieties of food, and then the nutritionists will tell us to eat healthy, to do things that are right. I say that too because we understand we are in a capitalist society. We all need to come to an agreement as workers. We all need to conscientize ourselves. It is then we can now come to conclusion. That is on that. Then the other question, can I remember? There's a question about workers' nonchalant attitude. The personal is political. Whatever we do, consciously or subconsciously, we are reacting to something. We are reacting to the state of the society. We cannot blame the workers who are nonchalant. You are not paying me well. People now do more than 2-3 different jobs, and you cannot expect these people to show their efficiency, to show how excellent they are in a particular field. You can have a medical doctor who is now into tech. I know people who are now, they're in the medical line, they're into tech, different things here and there, and they want to meet up because they just want to earn more, because there are a lot of responsibilities on ground. We all need to feed, we need access to clothing, shelter, which Karl Marx has said these are the basic things we need as human. So when workers are nonchalant, we should ask what is wrong. Like the case of the NBAC governance, the NSAS too. During those periods, why some of us were saying we should not, the protesters were angry and said we'll keep police on site. Some of them had that view that they don't even want police. And then some of us said, no, these people are workers. They are reacting that way because there's a problem in the system. It's a systemic problem. Something is wrong with the system. So we have to understand all of that. And of course, it will not just happen. It can only happen via things like this, such as this webinar, organizing, talking to ourselves. Even while organizing, some of us will get too busy with work that we don't even have the time to talk about other things. This is the way capitalism has really eaten deep into us, that we do not have that. So when we say workers are not working, we should not agree with that. We should agree that the system is not working for us. It is a systemic problem. I'm sorry to the Yoruba comrades. There's this thing about it is when you are happy that you can work well, you can produce well, you can be very active, So these are the things that controls us, consciously or subconsciously. And we have a lot of employers out there. I am saying employers because we have people who still work 9 to 5, and even those in the informal setting when they have their apprentice, they want to overuse because they feel like that is how they can take advantage. I once taught in a school at a time while I was teaching. This man said we're to have an head of the session party. Then this man said he will need me to be the MC. Immediately I asked him, are you going to add it to my salary at the end of the month? He gave that surprising look. I understand workers' rights. You cannot just come and use me. Yeah, I know I can do it, but I am not going to pull myself down for you to do it while you collected an exorbitant amount as the party fee from each student. These are the things that comes into play. Do I have anything that I want to say? I'm not sure. Maybe when I remember again. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Comrade Aladiton, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, to answer all the numerous questions, I think I was able to jot some few things. Though, I think one Olamide, if I get that name right, specifically asked me a question regarding the housing scheme we negotiated for workers in Lagos, if it is not only meant for union leaders. I think I would like to quickly answer that. I want to say the answer is no. I can tell you authoritatively, you can even come into the estate and verify, is almost 90% occupied by almost, I can say, low-income workers, particularly junior officers and all that. That's the particular estate in Ibechi. I can tell you that for free. You can come, do your independent research. Most of the people, they have their money being deducted from their salary on a monthly basis. So it's a product of negotiation. You see, I want to stress something. For some of us who have been privileged to be at the negotiation table for increase in wages of workers, I want to say this. You see, as union leaders, we have a lot to do. Most of the people leading the trade unions, I am sorry to say, are not necessarily intellectually mobile. I can say that authoritatively. Because you find out that certain persons got elected probably on the basis of maybe he's popular, he's nice to people, not necessarily having some certain leadership qualities. And when it's time for negotiation, the trade union setup, as far as some of us is concerned, is an oligarchic structure where few people speak on behalf of, thousands of people. Every negotiation, they will tell you is chairman, secretaries of this union who actually the truth is when you go for negotiation, you see government side coming with all kinds of experts, professionals. But from the trade union side, what you see is somebody say, I'm chairman, I'm secretary, I'm chairman, irrespective of probably their qualification, experience, or exposure. I sat one day in the negotiation table and I saw the way things were going, and I told myself, things cannot be done this way, and we expect to get the best for workers. That's why most times when you see leaders go into negotiation and you hear the outcome of figures that labor leaders eventually accept, you begin to ask yourself if these are truly representing workers. Sometimes you think these people have accepted bribe. I will say this: it's not that they have accepted bribe; they've been outmaneuvered, they've been outsmart by the government side on the negotiation table. I can tell you that because I've witnessed cases like that. So that's why I always tell people, sometimes it's not just for us to sit outside and criticize, and talk. We have to get involved. You must get involved. You can't change some of these things from outside. You must get yourself involved. I told myself, even before joining the trade union movement, I already had a master's degree before joining union, and I told myself I have to go back to school. I want to go and learn something about negotiation. I did. Even when I had the privilege of going out, I have to say I have to keep adding to knowledge, because I've seen that a lot can still be, you can still get a lot for your workers on the negotiation table if you know your left from right. So that's why when the lady said nothing is happening in Ogun, nothing is happening in other states, I want to tell you, it's a product of the leaders that you have elected. Some years ago, when we did consequential adjustment, I went to our NEC meeting. When I heard some of the figure coming from the northern part of the country, I wept. When I heard some of the figures, that's why today, if you check what a level 17 ends in Lagos to what a 17 ends in Ekiti, the gap is as high as 350,000 naira. The difference is as high as that. So the question is, why are these ones moving this at this pace? When we are saying that what they have in local, we are not saying is enough. No, that's not what we are saying. But to some extent, I think we as union leaders must accept culpability because a lot of union leaders are not doing well. I just have to, put that point on the table. And I think one of the way forward again to actually help and to further strengthen the informal sector, which actually constitutes bulk of the workers we are talking about, is organizing. There is no other ways about it. You must organize, organize, and organize. As TUC chairman in Lagos, I have had the privilege of receiving calls from workers from the informal sector asking questions, how can we belong to the trade union? We invite them to our office, ask them the necessary question. If it's actually a trade or an industry where a union already exists, we link them with the existing union there so that they join together. If it is one that is new, we help nurture them through Comrade Sheson Rufus, which I know is a familiar name. And he has actually helped in registering more than 5 or 6 union for the informal sector. We've been doing that. So the only way to ensure that you enhance, their collective bargaining power is to first of all ensure that they are organized. Once they are organized, I think from that step, you can start addressing some of the challenges they are facing in their sector. Then another issue is legislative action. Like I said in my earlier presentation, the Informal Sector Employment Bill is presently still at the National Assembly, and it has passed its third reading. But you see, most times trade union leaders are usually reactive. We are not proactive. This law, we should be interested. We should be studying this law and look at how to further, strengthen. Sometimes we leave all this in for these legislators who, like one of the speakers said, all the haze, all the highs, and before you know, it becomes a law. You start looking at the nitty-gritty of the law, and you start seeing certain contradictions, and the next amendment, before you know, it will take years and years. So as trade union leaders, we must be proactive. We must be interested in some of these policy issues so that we don't become reactive. And also, we need to also look at the issue of social protection. For example, if we take a look at the Pension Reform Act of 2004, when we migrated from the pay-as-you-go pension scheme to the contributory pension scheme, something happened in Nigeria. All of a sudden, the payment of gratuity stopped. From government side, I know private sector, they still do it. But the federal government or state government, they stop paying gratuity to their workers. And this is something that should have, initially, served like a lifeline for the workers. Immediately they see the service. It's a way of saying thank you to them by the employer. And you use that one to settle before, all the pension, stuff. But it was stopped. Recently, it was announced that I think the president newly signed it into law. A lot of people didn't know. They thought the president was magnanimous by just announcing. That's not true. The reintroduction of the payment of gratuity is a product of struggle. We've been at this struggle for more than 6 years through memo presentation, through all kinds of agitation. They shut it down even from Buhari era. That was, I think, toward the tail end of the former administration that a committee was now set up to look into it. I think eventually this government now signed it into law. So, but what that simply means now is that for anybody to exit the service, it simply means you get something like you get 100% of your you get 100% of your monthly salary as a way of saying thank you from your employer. So these are some of the ways through which you can also assist an average worker who is going on retirement. And we equally mentioned the issue of health insurance, that we can bring workers under the health insurance scheme so that they can be adequately protected. Because the truth is, when you go to hospital, an average surgery, average cost of medicine and all that is very expensive. Sometimes what you even pay for tests is more than your monthly salary. But with the likes of health insurance, it has a way of helping you to carry those costs without you taking extra from what you earn. So these things, we must be able to bring it. I know it's still something that is, I can say a work in progress. Based on the experiment in Lagos, I can say authoritatively maybe it's around 50% effective, but I know it's still a work in progress. I know some states like Ondo and some other states, they also have health insurance, but I don't know how effective it is in some of those areas. So, but I think things like this also can equally help. So, by the time we put all this into consideration, it brings us back to what truly constitutes a living wage. You see, a living wage should be a wage that should be able to, an average worker should be able to afford an average worker a decent, let's say, standard of living, something like that. Let's put it, in that form. Standard of living that is a little bit comfortable. What does that mean? You should be able to have a house of your own, you should be able to pay school fees, you should be able to, cater for your health, transportation, and all that. And from the statistics available to us, for an average person that lives in Lagos, based on the research we've done, even the 500,000 AAC is proposing is not enough. Cannot be, because what's the cost of rent in a city like Lagos? The cost of rent in Lagos cannot be the same as the cost of rent in a city like Ekiti. Same thing goes for transportation, etc. So by the time you put that figure to around, let's say, 720 something thousand naira on the average, the question is, this is a benchmark that not only government will pay, every other private sector will be bound by it to also pay that amount. I want to use my own environment, for example. Estate where I stay, we pay what we call facility fee. The facility fee, what is it meant for? It's to take care of the gardeners, the security guards, the cleaners. These are artisans that we say deserve a decent living wage. As at today, what they are being paid is below the national minimum wage. And at several meetings, as a labor leader, I've said, this thing is wrong. And the issue they kept telling me is, I should not bring the union stuff into the estate, because if you say they should increase the salary of these people, it simply means that the facility fee they are going to pay will definitely go up. That is the argument. And I said, that is the truth, but the law is the law. There's nothing you can do about it. So it simply means, for example, if we say the minimum wage is 700,000 now, an average barber in a barber shop, an average POS person, an average cleaner, all of them earn 700,000. The question now is, for example, people in my estate will now be, how much are you going to pay as facility fee? It comes back to the same people. So these are conversations that I want to believe we must sit down, to really have a sincere conversation. And like Prof said, Prof is actually spot on. Minimum wage should be tied to inflationary trend. Naturally, those adjustments should be happening. But unfortunately, in a country like Nigeria, where you don't even have proper data, where you don't even have an institution that works, so the question is, how can those things even be done in the first place? So, we still have a lot of things to do to actually strengthen the Nigerian system. But on the overall, I think the journey to a minimum wage, has to start, because they say you cannot start unless you start. And once you start, you have started. So I believe it's a journey. And I believe that as we gradually move towards that destination, it will definitely come with challenges. However, in order for us to get to that destination, leadership of the movement is very, very key. Because if you don't have the right labor leadership in place, believe me, I can tell you all these things will remain mere rhetorics and there will be no results. I so submit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Aladeton. Comrade Ismail Bello, it's a pleasure to call you to.
Comrade Baba, I hope this time around the element of tech will be a bit fair to me. But our comrades have spent a lot of time now. We just take it from the last speaker. I agree with him on the need to strengthen legislative advocacy and the organizing in the informal sector. Perfect. But I disagree with him about the situation in Lagos. I was privileged to be secretary in Lagos for 8 years. I was privileged to work with Sanwo-Olu as the commissioner for establishment. And the last national minimum wage negotiation in 2011, in which he presided, we had a different, we had some level of altercation to the extent that Sanwo-Olu had to ask Adelakun that who is this person, whether he was sure I was not going to leak out the discussion the kind of conversation we had at that table. And they generated the data about
Comrade Bello, Tech is still playing some hanky panky. Can you hear us? Hello? Hello, Comrade Bello. Comrade Bello, it's breaking again. We can't hear you. Can anybody hear Comrade Bello?
Not at all. I don't know why he's misbehaving now.
Okay, we can hear you now. We can hear you. Go on.
Can you hear me now?
It's like,
can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
It's better now. So I was giving the example of Lagos State and the engagement I had with Sanwo-Olu, then commissioner, and the comparison between what was paid to public civil servants in Lagos, the gap was almost 5 times in terms of difference. So I laid this basis because the image of Lagos State that is Comrade Aladito put forward is like an image of a state that has a fair remuneration template. It is far from it. You look at, when I made my initial input, I made a Jack and they built housing estates across Lagos State. There are vulcanizers in those housing estates. There are market women in those housing estates. There are teachers in those housing estates. I make bold to say, where are the artisans in the Lagos State housing estate of today? And the housing estates you are occupying, I'm not sure you will be able to pay for it throughout the present reality that we are confronted with. So we don't need to placate any government to think that they are doing well. They are not doing well. No state is doing well. And particularly for Lagos State, given the enormous weight that is in the hand of the state, life can be better for working people. 85,000 minimum wage in Lagos, completely unacceptable if you ask me. Completely unacceptable, given the condition of the material condition of workers in Lagos State. But that's a debate for another day. You and I can have that conversation and that engagement. Last, I like your conversation around informal workers and what can be there for them. I think it's important issues around social protection, tax relief, and all of that matters for social dialogue that the labor centers can take on board on behalf of army of informal workers. The good thing, like Aladito said, is that already quite enough.
We lost you again, Comrade Bello. Comrade Bello, can you hear us?
Moderator, sir. Star moderator.
Yeah, we can hear.
Can I quickly say something?
Okay. Quickly, whilst we are hoping Bello gets back.
Yes. I hope Comrade Bello can... I'm back again. Okay. It's off and on, it goes off and it comes back again. So okay, I really don't know where I stopped there, but on a final note, I thought I was talking about informal workers, but they need to put their informal workers, right?
Yeah.
Hello, informal workers, right?
That was when we lost you, yeah.
Yes, about putting their issues around taxation, around social protection, around support for their enterprise, around capacity building, and all of those for them. And certainly good thing is that more and more of these informal associations are joining TUC, are joining NSC. Yeah, they are joining NSC.
We're losing you again.
The workers, not just part of the association.
Okay.
The need for us to build coalition with civil society actors. That we've done, and we've seen the gain in the past. We've done that quite well in the past. When approaching minimum wage, we have all kind of campaigns across the country to put pressure on government, and I think to some extent it has worked. So it's something that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to go back, because it's important that we realize that the notion of bargaining is essentially about power, and it's about our ability to mobilize all our constituent units. Bearing in mind that about 90% of working people are outside of the formal setting, it's very important that we also factor in and intensify organizing of informal workers. Now, there are also issues around coverage. As it is today, whether you talk about minimum wage, whatever you say, just a minuscule number of working people are covered, maybe less than 5% of working people, because increasingly employers are getting very repressive of unionization, of workers exercising the right to freedom of association and collective bargaining. So what you're saying, in essence, tomorrow you have another minimum wage act. Maybe 5% of the working population in Nigeria will have benefit of it, because the bulk of the people are outside of the net of the union that will negotiate implementation of this minimum wage. On a final note, and I think Zaladita who spoke about consequential adjustment. The last minimum wage, we shot ourselves in the foot. He spoke about capacity for union negotiators, and I think it's very important. After the last minimum wage, the Joint Public Negotiating Council had an interface with government to set the template for wage adjustment in the public service. Unfortunately, they ended up with what do you call this? Instead of using a percentage, they agreed to it, I think, some kind of absolute figure. And there were a lot of a flat rate, exactly. So there was a lot of, feedback that was a bit negative. That was quite negative, because a lot of workers didn't actually get the benefit of that consequential adjustment. I think it's a lesson for us as we prepare for another round of minimum wage, that if our colleagues in the public service need a helping hand in negotiating the consequential adjustment, we must be able, both the NSA and TUC must provide that to ensure that Nigerian workers get the benefit of whatever struggle, whatever the outcome of struggles may be. Baba and colleagues at the Workers' Right Committee for Workers' Right, I want to thank you very sincerely, and I want to say that this kind of engagement and conversation is very important, and I hope that we'll be able to also interface more with our colleagues in the union, so that at least we can use this not just as a knowledge sharing platform, but also as an opportunity to mobilize ourselves and expand our network across civil society organizations. Once again, I say thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Comrade Bello. We should be wrapping up now. Aladito, you said you want, but just 1 minute, please. We are far behind time, but
yes. I just want to, based on what Comrade Bello said, the issue, you mentioned Sanwo-Olu when he was commissioner, that discrepancy in the salary structure has been corrected 2 years ago. I just say, let me tell him that they've corrected it. And when that correction was made, I can tell you that some workers got as high as 40,000, 50,000 addition to their salary. Just let me say that.
Okay, that's good.
Good. It has been quite a robust discussion. There are a lot I would also have wanted to contribute to, but we are already very, very far gone, and I think we should be drawing things to a close. I'm actually impressed that most of the participants have still stayed on, despite the long time. But before we round up, we need to have a closing remarks from the chair of the WRC. It is a pleasure to call on. And you were saying something, Bello, about the need to interface with the unions and unionists. I'm happy to say most of us in the workers' rights campaigns are active unionists, including union leaders, rank and file leaders. So we're part and parcel of the movement in truth and in deed. And the chairperson of the WRC is no other person than Comrade Francis Akinjole, General Secretary of the Air Transport Services Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, ATSAN. Comrade Francis, you have the floor for the closing remarks, please. Comrade Francis AK. I'm not sure, probably he's also having internet challenges because he's in the meeting. No. Comrade Francis, can you hear us? Okay. Well, as I said earlier, we appreciate how time has gone and people are still here, so we'll just round up now. So I thank all the panelists and all the participants who took out time to join this discussion and engage in the robust discourse. Your interventions enriched our discussion. And I'm also happy, as Comrade Bello and also Aladiton did say, what we're doing as the WRC is something that we should keep up with. So the WRC intends to organize similar online meetings on the last Sunday of every month. So we urge you to mark your date for this, and we'll circulate notices for this. We also believe that one of the things is the internet, online, since COVID has been very useful, but practical organizing at the heart of it is physical. It is also why we'll be organizing a series of physical symposiums, and that starts this month. Next month rather, which is August. We're still in July. I'm going ahead of myself, looking forward to next month. So the first in the series of our symposiums, physical symposiums, will be held at Lagos and Abuja. And the theme is on how do we end the worsening hardship that we are facing as working people. That is the theme for the two symposiums. That in Lagos will take place on the 6th of August at the Workers' Rights Center, our secretariat, in 16 Araromi Street, Araromi Close, 16 Saratu Close, Araromi, Iyanokwaja. And for those of you in Abuja, it will take place at the Social Actions National Action Center, 20 Yalinga Street at 10 a.m. on Saturday, 15 August. That for Lagos on 6th August starts at 2 p.m. The flyers for this meeting are also being circulated, and if you haven't seen this, they would definitely get across to you. If you're in any of these two cities, make it a date to be there, and let us talk together. And beyond talking together, let us also stand together at the barricades and fight for a better society and beyond minimum wage for the liberation of the workers. So very importantly, we urge you all to be unrelenting in campaigning for workers' rights wherever you are. Unite and fight for workers' self-liberation and our building a better, just and equitable society. A luta continua, Victoria Sata. Solidarity.
Workers and units.
Unite and fight. Comrade Abiodun Oladeton, please, I'm Shoneye Lance. I should write to you soon. Well, I would like to invite you to a program.
We can take that by if we can get his details later. We're summing up the meeting here.
Oh,
Please.
sorry, I thought the meeting is over. I'm sorry. So I just did try.
Yeah, please. Once again, comrades, thank you all for that meeting. Workers and youth,
unite and fight.
Thank you.
Unite and